Daniel Mercer did not expect the beginning of the end of his relationship to happen next to a champagne tower and soft wedding lights. It started with one quiet sentence. "Please just don't make this awkward tonight." She didn't even look directly at him when she said it. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. Around them, guests were laughing, glasses clinking, waiters moving through the reception terrace with practiced precision. The air carried the faint smell of champagne and expensive perfume. "What do you mean?" he asked. Mia sighed, the kind of sigh someone makes when they think they are explaining something obvious. "Just try to be more social, and maybe don't talk too much about work." That was the moment something shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but enough. Daniel was 29 and worked in cybersecurity risk analysis for a financial technology company. His entire job existed to prevent problems before anyone even knew they almost happened. Quiet work, precise work, the kind of work nobody notices when you do it well. He liked it that way. People trusted him because he was steady. If he promised something, he delivered. If someone he cared about was struggling, he didn't just talk about support, he provided it. In relationships, he operated the same way. Mia used to say that was what made him different. "You're safe," she once told him after a difficult week. At the time, he thought she meant dependable. Later, he would understand she meant predictable. Mia was 26 and worked in digital marketing. Fast-talking, creative, social in a way Daniel never tried to be. She could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 3 new contacts and 2 invitations without seeming like she tried. They had been together a little over 2 years. Long enough to talk about the future? Not long enough for Daniel to notice he had slowly become background stability instead of a partner. When they first met, Mia had just lost her main freelance contract. A startup collapsed and payments stopped overnight. Her income disappeared almost instantly. Daniel didn't hesitate. He helped her rebuild her portfolio website, helped restructure her pricing, introduced her to 2 companies through his professional network, covered most of their shared expenses for nearly 5 months while she found stable work. He never mentioned it again. When she finally secured a permanent position, they celebrated with takeout eaten on the floor of their apartment because they still hadn't finished furnishing it. "I wouldn't have survived this year without you," she told him. At the time, he thought that meant partnership. Later, he realized it mostly meant support. The warning signs were never dramatic, just small moments. The kind people excuse because nothing seems serious enough to fight about. Mia had a longtime friend named Ryan. They met years earlier at a design conference. Ryan worked in high-end automotive sales and seemed to treat life like a continuous networking event. Confident, charismatic, always somewhere interesting. Daniel tried to like him. Ryan wasn't openly disrespectful. He was just always present, texting Mia, inviting her places, showing up in conversations more often than Daniel expected. Whenever Daniel carefully mentioned discomfort, Mia reacted the same way. "You're overthinking. He's basically family. I trust you, so you should trust me." Daniel wanted to be reasonable, so he told himself discomfort was insecurity, and insecurity was something adults fixed quietly. The comparisons started slowly, never directly, always disguised as observations. "Ryan would love this place. Ryan says networking is everything. Ryan always knows what to say in rooms like this." Daniel noticed something strange. Ryan existed in stories where Daniel didn't, and Daniel existed in responsibilities Ryan never carried. One provided stability. The other provided excitement. Daniel told himself that was just personality differences, until Mia began asking questions that didn't really feel like questions. "Why don't you ever do something spontaneous?" That one stayed with him, because 6 months earlier he had canceled a hiking trip with his friends to help her move when she unexpectedly lost her apartment. He had spent that entire weekend assembling furniture and carrying boxes. Ryan had reacted with a thumbs-up emoji. Daniel said nothing. He was getting used to saying nothing. Social media made things harder to ignore. Photos from coffee shops, industry events, weekend outings. Ryan appeared often. Daniel rarely did. "It just happens," Mia said when he asked once. "You don't like photos." That wasn't true. He just hadn't been invited to most of those moments. That realization stayed with him longer than he expected. The wedding was supposed to be a good weekend, a reset. Mia talked about it for weeks. Her cousin was getting married at a renovated estate outside a coastal town. Outdoor ceremony, reception hall with warm lights and live music. Daniel made an effort. He bought a tailored suit, chose a thoughtful gift after asking what the couple actually needed, even practiced basic dancing at home because Mia loved dancing, and he didn't want her to feel unsupported. Normal things, partner things. The week before the wedding, Mia became more critical. No, not that jacket. Don't tell that story again. Please don't be awkward. Ryan would be there too. Of course, family friend. Always part of the circle. Daniel told himself he was imagining tension. Until the morning of the wedding when Mia spent most of breakfast smiling at her phone. Ryan was sending jokes. Daniel saw the name, said nothing. But this time the silence felt different. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Soft sunlight, a light breeze, decorations moving gently. Mia held his arm, smiled for photos. Everything looked normal. For a while, Daniel believed it was. Then the reception started, and she pulled him aside, which led to that sentence. Just don't make this awkward tonight. That was when Daniel finally understood something he had been avoiding. Sometimes disrespect doesn't arrive as betrayal. Sometimes it arrives as embarrassment. And sometimes the most dangerous moment in a relationship isn't when someone lies to you. It's when they start being ashamed of you. The real breaking point didn't happen when she asked him to switch tables. It happened when she explained why. Just let Ryan sit here instead, Mia said quietly. He connects better with my family. For a brief second, Daniel thought he had misunderstood her. Then he saw the empty chair beside her. His chair. And everything became very clear. He looked at the table. Her parents, her sister, 2 aunts, a cousin, and the place that was supposed to be his. And where exactly am I supposed to sit? Daniel asked. She gestured casually toward the far side of the room without even really looking. There are some open seats near the back. Like she was suggesting he move his coat. Not his place in her life. Ryan stood there smiling politely, hands in his pockets. Not objecting, not refusing, not saying Daniel should keep his seat. Just waiting. Daniel noticed something important at that moment. Ryan wasn't surprised, which meant this conversation probably didn't start here. It probably started before Daniel even arrived. It's just dinner, Mia continued. You're overthinking this. Daniel nodded slowly. People often say it's not a big deal right before asking you to accept something that clearly is. I'm your partner, he said quietly. Why does he need that seat instead of me? Mia exhaled in visible frustration, because now he was making things inconvenient. Because he knows how to talk to people, she said. He keeps conversations going. You disappear in rooms like this. There it was. No subtlety left. A direct comparison. A quiet public ranking. Also, she added, lowering her voice slightly, he just went through a breakup. He shouldn't be sitting alone. Daniel almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because of how strange the logic sounded when spoken out loud. The boyfriend gets replaced because the friend feels lonely, and she said it like it was completely reasonable. Don't make this dramatic, she added. It's one night. One night. Daniel realized something in that moment. Disrespect is almost always presented as temporary, as if duration changes meaning, as if something small can't still reveal something big. Ryan finally spoke. Hey man, I don't want to cause problems, he said smoothly. But he didn't step back, didn't refuse, didn't say you should sit here. Just polite words without sacrifice. Daniel understood everything he needed to from that. Ryan competed. Daniel accommodated. That had always been the difference. Daniel looked at Mia one last time. Not angry, just certain. For a second, he almost said something else. Something that would have tried to fix it. Something the old version of him would have said. That version of him stayed quiet. If that's how you see it, he said calmly, then you should enjoy your evening. Her expression changed. This wasn't the reaction she expected. No argument, no emotional appeal, no attempt to negotiate his position. He simply stepped back, turned, and walked away. He heard her call his name once, then again louder. But he didn't stop. Sometimes the strongest boundary isn't spoken, it's walked. By the time he reached the parking area, his phone was already vibrating. One call, then another, then messages. He didn't check them yet. He just sat behind the wheel for a moment before starting the engine. Hands steady. My mind is unusually quiet. The drive back felt longer than it actually was. Streetlights repeating overhead. His thoughts replaying one detail again and again. Not what she said. How easily she said it. Like he had already been replaced in her mind long before tonight. The first message came about 15 minutes into the drive. Where did you go? Then, this isn't funny. Then, my parents are asking where you are. Daniel actually let out a quiet breath at that one. Not because it was funny, because it revealed the real problem, not his feelings, her image. When he finally parked outside the apartment, there were 6 voicemails waiting. He listened to them sitting in the dark. Engine off. First voicemail, annoyed. Daniel, what was that? You just left. Second, defensive. I didn't mean anything bad. You're taking it wrong. Third, concern about appearances. My family noticed you're gone. This is awkward. Fourth, softer tone. Okay, maybe I said it badly. Fifth, uneasy. Please call me. I'm starting to worry. Sixth, crying. I'm sorry, just answer. Daniel noticed something while listening. Not once did she say, I hurt you. Not once. I shouldn't have done that. Only, why did you react like this? That difference mattered more than anything else she said. He deleted the voicemails one by one. Not emotionally, just deliberately. Like clearing files he didn't need anymore. Then he turned the phone off, not to punish her, to hear his own thoughts again. Inside the apartment, everything looked the same, which felt strange, because nothing was the same anymore. He packed a single bag, laptop, documents, a few days of clothes, toiletries, simple things, practical things. The inventory of someone making a decision he didn't intend to undo. Instead of staying with friends, Daniel checked into a small business hotel across town. Neutral space. No shared memories, no explanations. Just distance. The next morning, he turned his phone on briefly. Long enough to send one message. Mia, this relationship stopped being healthy for me. I'll collect the rest of my things this week. Please don't contact me. No accusations, no arguments, just closure. Then he blocked her number. He didn't go to work that day. Not because he was falling apart, because he wanted quiet. He returned to something he had neglected. Routine, structure, control. He went to the gym for the first time in months without canceling to match someone else's plans. The workout didn't fix anything emotionally, but it gave his mind something simple. Effort in, result out. No confusion, no mixed signals. Over the next several days, Daniel handled his exit the same way he handled risk projects at work. Quietly, systematically. He rented a small storage unit, moved his things gradually while Mia was at work. No confrontations, no emotional scenes, just logistics. By the end of the week, everything that belonged to him was gone. The lease had always been under his name, a detail that suddenly mattered. He legally changed the locks, transferred utilities, updated accounts. Not revenge, just closure. He didn't post anything online, didn't explain things to mutual friends, didn't try to control the narrative. People who leave with dignity rarely need announcements. The strangest part about leaving the wrong relationship wasn't the pain. It was the quiet that came after. No tension waiting for him at the end of the day, no emotional negotiations, no unpredictable moods he needed to anticipate. Just silence where stress used to live. Daniel didn't feel heartbroken. He felt recalibrated, like something in his life had quietly returned to its correct position. He made a conscious decision not to follow Mia's life anymore. No checking her profiles, no asking mutual friends, no curiosity searches late at night when thoughts tend to drift. But information still reached him anyway. It always does when lives overlap. Not because you look, because someone always talks. The first thing he heard came a few days after the wedding. Not gossip, just an offhand comment from someone who didn't realize they had broken up. Crazy night after you left, a colleague mentioned casually. Mia and that sales guy were basically running the dance floor. Daniel just nodded. No visible reaction. He wasn't surprised. What surprised him was what came next. Actually, it got a little uncomfortable later. Daniel didn't ask for details. People usually say more when you don't push. Apparently, Ryan had spent most of the night doing what he always did. Working the room. Not socially, professionally, turning introductions into opportunities, talking business between dances, collecting contacts like currency. Daniel recognized the type immediately. Not cruel, not even dishonest, just transactional. Every interaction had a purpose. Every room had potential value. Mia had laughed things off earlier in the evening, but later one of her relatives pulled her aside. Daniel only heard one line from that conversation through someone else. "Be careful who you put first." That sentence stayed with him longer than he expected, because it sounded less like criticism and more like a warning she hadn't wanted to hear. About 10 days later, more details surfaced. Not dramatic, just messy. Ryan and Mia had argued, not about Daniel, about expectations. Ryan thought things were casual. Mia apparently didn't. Reality tends to appear exactly where fantasy gets too comfortable. During the argument, Ryan had said something Daniel would later hear secondhand. "I thought we were just having fun. You made this bigger than it was." There was another line too, colder, more revealing. "I never said I was replacing anyone." Daniel didn't feel satisfaction hearing that, just confirmation. Sometimes clarity arrives long after decisions are already made. The consequences didn't look like karma. They looked like gravity. Choices landing exactly where they naturally lead. Mia started missing deadlines at work. Nothing catastrophic. Just small failures that slowly change how people see your reliability. Stress rarely destroys stability overnight. It chips away at consistency. Her family shifted too. Not aggressively, just subtly. More questions. Less automatic support. Daniel later heard her mother had asked one uncomfortable question. "Why did you push away someone who treated you well?" Simple question. Difficult answer. Daniel didn't take pleasure in any of it, because by then he understood something important. Closure doesn't come from watching someone else struggle. It comes from realizing you don't need to watch anymore. And he genuinely didn't. His own life became simpler. Work, training, long walks without distractions, things he used to enjoy before constantly adjusting himself to someone else's emotional climate. The anger phase never really came, just understanding. Then distance. And eventually something close to peace. About 2 weeks after the wedding, the first serious attempt to reach him happened. Unknown number. Evening. He let it ring. Listened to the voicemail later. Her voice sounded different, less confident, less controlled. "Daniel, I know you're ignoring me, I get why, but we should talk. That wedding situation got out of hand." Pause. "I shouldn't have handled it like that." Another pause. "Ryan isn't important." Daniel noticed the wording immediately. Not, "I hurt you," not, "I was wrong." Just repositioning facts, trying to correct the narrative instead of the behavior. The attempts continued. Different numbers, an email, even a short message through a professional networking platform. Polite, careful, like she was trying different versions of herself, hoping one might finally reach him. Daniel answered none of them, not to punish her, because he had already answered with his decision. Then came the message that almost got a response. Not because it was convincing, because it was unintentionally honest. "I didn't think you would actually leave." Daniel read that line twice. That was the real story, not the wedding, not Ryan. Expectation. She believed his patience had no real limit. That realization removed the last remaining doubt. That night, Daniel admitted something to himself he hadn't fully accepted before. He hadn't been competing with Ryan. He had been competing with the version of himself willing to accept less than he deserved. Ryan was just the catalyst, not the cause. That realization mattered more than anything Mia had said. The final voicemail came almost 3 weeks after the wedding. Another unknown number. He almost didn't listen, but he did. Her voice sounded tired now. No performance left. "I know you probably won't answer," she said. "I just wanted to say I understand now why you left." Silence. Then, "I thought stability meant you would always stay." That sentence stayed with him, because it explained everything she had never been able to articulate before. Daniel deleted the message. Not angrily, not emotionally. Just finished. Some endings don't need discussions. Just acceptance that the person you thought you knew never really existed the way you believed. And sometimes the strongest revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's building a life where their absence stops being noticeable. Daniel didn't expect the pressure to come from people who had never been part of the relationship. But that's what happened. Not Mia first. Everyone around her. The messages started politely. People he barely knew suddenly wrote like they were mediators in a conflict that had already ended. Mia is really struggling. Maybe just hear her out. You two always seemed good together. Don't throw it away over one bad night. Daniel noticed something almost immediately. Nobody asked what he experienced, only what he should forgive. That detail told him everything he needed to know about how people see breakups from the outside. Her brother reached out next. Not aggressive, almost reasonable. Look, he said during a short call Daniel hadn't planned to answer. She's taking this really hard. Our parents are upset too. But relationships hit rough patches. You don't just disappear. Daniel answered calmly. I didn't disappear. I left. There was a pause after that. Same words, completely different meanings. The real shift came when Mia's mother called. Daniel answered only because he thought something serious might have happened. Her tone wasn't emotional. It was corrective, like she was addressing a misunderstanding instead of a wound. This situation is being exaggerated, she said. Mia explained everything. It was just a seating situation. Daniel let her finish. You don't end a serious relationship over something symbolic, she continued. Pride shouldn't destroy something real. Symbolic. Daniel realized something important in that moment. People who don't feel humiliation often call it symbolic. With respect, Daniel said evenly, it wasn't about the chair. She didn't like that answer. You young people give up too easily. Daniel paused before answering. No, he said quietly. Some of us just stop accepting things we shouldn't have accepted in the first place. That ended the conversation, and it confirmed something else too. He wasn't going back. Mia escalated next. She showed up at his apartment one evening without warning. Daniel saw her through the door camera before she knocked. For a brief second, he considered opening it. Old habits, old instincts. That moment passed. He didn't open. Not because he was afraid, because he was finished. Her voice came through the door, soft at first. Daniel, I know you're inside. No response. I just want to talk. Still nothing. Then the honesty started slipping through. Ryan isn't who I thought he was. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Not because it hurt, because it confirmed what he already knew. I see that now, she continued. You were right about him. That sentence sounded like she believed it was the correct solution. Agreement instead of accountability. As if validation would repair what respect had already broken. We can fix this, she said. Daniel almost answered. Not to reconcile, to correct the wording. Some things aren't broken. They're finished. He stayed silent. Her voice eventually cracked. I miss you. 20 minutes later, she left, her footsteps fading down the hallway. The building is quiet again. Daniel didn't feel relief or victory, just certainty. The next phase surprised him less. When an apology fails, some people turn to anger. Another unknown number, different tone, sharper. You really think you're perfect? She said in a voicemail. I chose you even though you live like a schedule. Daniel actually smiled slightly at that, because it explained everything. Stability had always been something she tolerated, not something she valued. The message continued. Ryan was a mistake, but you're acting like you're flawless. You ignored problems too. That part was partly true. Daniel accepted that. He had ignored problems, just not anymore. I deserve another chance, she said at the end. You don't just walk away from 2 years. Daniel understood something important while hearing that. Time invested does not guarantee value preserved. Length of a relationship doesn't automatically equal its health. Her longest attempt came through email, pages of explanations, stress, pressure, confusion, external reasons, very little ownership. One line stood out. I thought you would always be there. That sentence explained more than everything else combined. Not love, expectation, reliability mistaken for permanence. Life kept moving. Daniel stopped measuring progress emotionally. He measured it practically. Better sleep, better focus, more consistency at work. 3 weeks later, he was offered a leadership role on a major security project. Nothing dramatic, just earned trust. The kind built slowly. The kind he always understood. His routines stabilized too. Training consistently, cooking properly again, spending more time outside, reconnecting with parts of his life he had quietly set aside. He didn't become someone new. He returned to who he had been before constant emotional compromise. The new relationship developed quietly, not as a replacement, as a contrast. Her name was Clara. They met through a weekend hiking group Daniel had rejoined. No fireworks, no drama, just easy conversation. She asked questions and actually listened to answers, a rare quality he now recognized immediately. They kept things simple, respect first. Everything else is optional. And for the first time in a long while, that felt enough. About 2 months after the wedding, Daniel attended a small birthday gathering for a mutual friend. He considered skipping it, not because he was afraid, because he didn't need old social circles anymore. But he went, because his life wasn't something he needed to hide from. Clara came with him. Simple evening, small bar, 15 people maybe, normal conversation. Until the atmosphere shifted slightly. Daniel didn't see Mia enter, but he felt the subtle change that happens when unfinished history walks into a room. When he finally turned, she was already looking directly at him, then at Clara. And in that moment, everything that remained unresolved finally arrived. Daniel didn't feel anger when he saw Mia again. What he felt was distance, the kind that only appears after you finally understand someone completely and realize there is nothing left to argue about. She looked different, not dramatically, just worn down in small ways. Less composed, less certain, like someone who had been emotionally exhausted for too long without admitting it. When she approached, her confidence seemed to arrive a few seconds after she did, carefully assembled, fragile underneath. "Daniel, can we talk for a minute?" Her voice was controlled, but there was strain behind it. Clara glanced at him briefly, not threatened, not possessive, just aware. Daniel shook his head slightly. "We can talk here." That was the first boundary Mia clearly hadn't expected. "I know I probably don't deserve your time," Mia began, "but I needed to say this in person." Daniel waited. Not cold, not defensive, just finished. "I handled everything badly," she said. "That night and everything after." She swallowed. "I didn't understand what I was risking until it was gone." Daniel didn't interrupt. Sometimes people need to hear their own words before they understand them. "Ryan wasn't who I thought he was," she continued. "He said things about me, about us. I ignored signs I shouldn't have ignored." Daniel noticed something different. For the first time, she wasn't defending herself, just describing consequences. No excuses, just aftermath. "I thought excitement mattered more," she admitted. "I didn't understand what stability actually meant." That sentence sounded more honest than anything she had said before. Still too late, but honest. "I know you're seeing someone," she said quietly, briefly looking toward Clara. "I'm not asking you to leave her." A short pause. "I'm asking if you believe people can grow after they mess something up," Daniel answered carefully. "Yes." Hope appeared on her face for just a second. Then he continued. "Just usually not with the same person they hurt." That was when she understood. Not dramatically, just quietly. "I didn't leave to punish you," Daniel said. "And I didn't leave because of one moment." He chose his words carefully. "I left because I finally understood I also deserved to feel chosen." That sentence landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't emotional. It was final. "I did choose you," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head slightly. "You chose me when it was comfortable. Not cruel, not angry, just accurate." Silence settled between them. Background noise filled the space, glasses clinking. Someone was laughing across the room. Life continues normally around a conversation that once would have felt like everything. "I did love you," she said finally. Daniel nodded. "I know." "Not I still do. Just acknowledgement. Respect for what once existed. Nothing more." "And I hope things get better for you," he added. And he meant it. Because indifference isn't wishing someone harm. It's simply no longer needing them in your story. She nodded slowly. No dramatic tears. Just acceptance arriving reluctantly. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too," Daniel answered. And that was it. No explosion, no dramatic ending. Just two people no longer connected by expectation. After she left, Clara touched his arm gently. "You okay?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Yeah." And for the first time, that answer required no effort, no hesitation, no second thoughts, just truth. The rest of the evening felt normal, which was the real victory. No emotional weight, no second guessing, just presence, conversation, music, laughter that didn't feel forced. For the first time in months, his past didn't feel like something standing behind him. It just felt like something that had already happened. Months passed quietly. Daniel's career continued moving forward. More responsibility, more trust. Not because of the breakup, because he was no longer emotionally distracted. His relationship with Clara developed slowly. No urgency, no pressure, just consistency. Something he now understood was rarer than chemistry, and far more valuable. He never checked Mia's life again. Not because he was trying to prove anything, because curiosity had simply ended. And that was how he knew he was truly over it. Not when he left, not when she apologized, when he stopped wondering. Sometimes he still thought about that wedding night, not with resentment, as a reference point. The night he understood that respect isn't something you negotiate. It's something you either experience or you eventually walk away to find. If there was one thing he learned, it was simple. The right relationship never requires you to become smaller to keep it, and the wrong one always does. Some people enter your life as partners. Some enter as lessons. And sometimes the hardest truth is realizing they were never meant to be both.